Hi everyone and welcome to the GradCracker and Cummins webinar. This webinar will hopefully give you a good insight into who Cummins is, what it's like to be an intern and graduate there, and the future opportunities which could be open to you. You can also discover what the culture is like, what projects you could be involved in, and the hints and tips on what you can expect when going through the application process. Cummins has advertised their opportunities with us since 2007, right from the very beginning of GradCracker. They are there for a member of the 5-year club. This means that they've advertised with us on GradCracker for the last 5 years, or in fact, in the case of Cummins, the last 13 years. It's definitely worth checking out their hub as it's filled with lots of great information for you to read and watch, and Grace will be referring back to this, the content throughout her presentation part of the webinar. So just to go on to introductions, Grace, if we can start with you. So Grace is the Talent Acquisition Coordinator, that's really hard to say, that's a mouthful, based in the Huddersfield office, and we'll be going through the application process and also any hints and tips that she wants to share with you, our audience. Just so you all know, a big focus for today is on the Daventry and Manston sites, as this is where Cummins recruits most of the students and graduates into. For those who don't know, Daventry is a market town in Northamptonshire, about an hour's drive away from Birmingham and about 20 minutes from Northampton. And Manston is an out-of-town technical site in Kent, about 15 minutes away from the seaside town of Ramsgate and about an hour and a half from London. So just to give you a bit of an idea about the geography around that as well. Okay, so what we're going to do now is introduce you to the panelists, and then we'll go through the webinar, and then Sophie will speak to the grads a little bit later on. Grads and interns, sorry Emma, a little bit later on. So to start with you, Tom, you studied automotive engineering at Oxford Brookes. If you could just tell the viewers about your job at Cummins, what department, your job title and the department that you work in.
Yeah, so I work in service engineering, so as a current product support service engineer and also a VPI service engineer. I've been at Cummins about 2 years now, and I did start as a placement in the block line.
And you enjoying it?
Yeah, I love it, yeah.
Good. Okay, so Verity, on to you. So you studied chemical engineering at Nottingham. Yep. Same question to you. How long have you been at Cummins and what department do you work in?
I'm the same as Tom. I started as a placement student, the same time as Tom actually, and started as a graduate engineer 2 years ago. I work in lab ops as a lab ops engineer, which we do development testing, but I'll go into a little bit more detail later on. Yeah, but yeah, that's what I do.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Harry, on to you. So you went to the University of Aston and you studied mechanical engineering. What do you do there at Cummins now?
So I'm Harry. I studied a placement year at Cummins and I've been working test manufacturing engineering as a technician. So it's just looking after the engines in production from when they're finished being built to the beginning of the trim line.
Perfect. Thank you, Harry. So what we'll do now is just, Emma's a little bit different. So the people that we've just spoken to are all grads. So they've all been through the internship and now are graduates at Cummins. Now, Emma has just recently finished your internship at Cummins, haven't you, Emma? And she's due back at university in the autumn. So Emma is currently studying mechanical engineering at Coventry, but could you give the audience a bit of an idea about what department you worked in during your internship?
Yeah, so I've just finished my placement year at Cummins and I was working in Daventry, and I was working in the power cylinder, crank rod and gear train subsystem team. So basically we're design and validation engineers. I finished my placement year about a week ago. I'm going to go back to university now to finish my degree at Coventry University, and then I'll come back as a graduate next year.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Emma. So what we're going to do is move on now to Tom. The graduates later on will focus on a specific area of their roles and their job and everything else that they do at Cummins. So you will find out more about them from Sophie a little bit later on in the webinar. So just to introduce Tom, Tom looks after all the recruitment, so we've got two Toms. So Tom Powell looks after all the recruitment at the Daventry site. Tom is going to introduce himself, and then what I'll do is I'll share screen with you all, because Tom is going to give you a bit of a PowerPoint presentation about who Cummins is and their visions for the future. So over to you, Tom.
Okay, cool, thanks. Hi everyone. Yeah, so a bit about myself first, I guess. So I actually graduated from Sheffield University in 2005 with a mechanical engineering degree. Yeah, during my time at university, I actually completed 3 summer placements for an offshore drilling company called Fugro Seacor, and that was actually being as a design engineer. Following university, I did a graduate program with Delphi Diesel Systems, looking after high pressure common rail systems. Once I finished that scheme, that was about 4 years, I actually moved up to Cummins to be a senior test and validation engineer. Yeah, I've been with Cummins about 8.5 years now. My current role is the power cylinder crank rod and gear team leader. So Emma's illustrious manager for the last year. Yeah, so as Emma mentioned, we work on those components and cover both design and validation those components through current product and also new product introduction. Yeah, and also take care of the UK Power Systems Tech Centre student recruitment this year, covering about 15 different positions.
Oh wow!
So, yeah, keeping me busy.
Tom. Okay, so I'll share just share my screen with you all. And I'll just introduce you to the PowerPoint, if you just bear with me. Hopefully everybody can see that. There you go, Tom. So I'll take you, your leader, but if you just want to start your presentation.
Okay, brilliant, thanks. Yeah, so just give a quick overview of Cummins in general, the Power Systems business unit, which myself and the other graduates and students sit within, and then also just a quick overview of some of the roles we actually have available across our Daventry and Manston sites. Get things through my end as well. Oh. Yes, sorry, keep my notes up. There we go. Yeah, so Cummins operates in 190 countries and territories around the world, employs over 61,000 people worldwide. In 2019, we actually produced over 1.4 million engines, making us the largest independent manufacturer in the world. Last year, the company invested roughly $1 billion into research and development, and that's across both existing engine products and in new power technology. Cummins has been a global leader for over 100 years now, with 2019 being the 100-year anniversary of the engine business, and 2020 being the 100-year anniversary of our power generation business, which was formerly the Onan Corporation before acquisition by Cummins in 1986. On the right-hand side of the screen here, you'll see many of the global partners and customers that Cummins work with around the world. Cummins as a company truly values its employees and communities in which we operate. As such, through significant Cummins leadership team, global leadership engagement, global focus groups, and incorporation of employer feedback, we developed what we call our story. What you'll see in our story are the critical elements of the Cummins culture that define who we are as a company and the way we work. Our mission describes why we exist, our vision describes what we want to accomplish, and our values describe how we do our work and how we behave with all of our stakeholders. Throughout Cummins, we also encourage our employees to give something back to their local community through our corporate responsibility program. This program allows employees to spend a number of work days out of the office supporting projects in their local communities each year. Through 2019, 82% of our employees volunteered their time supporting 3 key areas: the environment, education, equality of opportunity. On the right, you can see some photos of our local projects at the top and global projects at the bottom. Cummins is committed to making people's lives better by powering a more prosperous world. We are continuing to advance technology and power solutions that are essential to our future. We understand that strong communities and business depend on a healthier planet, and we understand that we cannot do this alone. Planet 2050 is a long-range business strategy with an environmental lens that uses actions, advocacy, and partnerships to do our part to drive change at a healthier planet. Our goals cover three major priorities: addressing climate change and air emissions, using natural resources more sustainably, and partnering so that our communities are better because we are there. As well as our 2050 goals, we have also set ourselves 8 key goals for 2030, which you can see at the bottom of this slide. They focus on 2 key areas: science-based targets for the reduction in emissions from our products and manufacturing techniques, and making the most efficient use of raw materials while reducing the amount of waste we produce. The Cummins business as a whole is split into 5 operating segments: engine, power systems, components, distribution, and new power. Myself and other students and graduates on the call today operate in the power systems segment. Within the power systems segment, our products serve the different markets you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, ranging from mining and rail to mission-critical applications like hospital and data center emergency power generation. Within these markets, we provide both standalone engines and also complete power generation units and components. On the engine side of the power systems segment, we work with engines ranging from 19 litres up to our newest 95-litre engine platform. Within this range, we have 23 different engine variants utilising both diesel and natural gas. The engines range in power from 450 horsepower up to 5,500 horsepower. The graphic on the right gives you an idea of the physical size of our engines. On the power generation side, we work with diesel power generation units ranging from 2 to 3,500 kilowatts, and natural gas powered units up to 2 megawatts, which is enough power to power 1,300 homes simultaneously. We supply both complete power generation units as well as standalone engines that our customers can build into their own gensets. We also work on the development and production of power generation components, including alternators, switchgear, and remote monitoring and networking components. The power systems segment predominantly operates across 2 UK sites, one in Daventry and one in Manston. The Power Systems Technical Centre is split across our Daventry and Manston sites, whilst the engine and genset manufacturing takes place in Daventry. The current roles available, we have a wide range of placements available for summer 21, start across a number of tech centre and manufacturing plant departments. The current roles available in the tech centre are shown on the left and the manufacturing-based roles on the right. Throughout all our placements, we are looking for highly motivated individuals who are innovative, driven to succeed with a passion to challenge the status quo. For our technical roles, we're also looking for a wide range of applicants across all STEM-related subjects. Throughout the Power Systems UK sites, our graduate roles are often filled entirely by students who have completed a placement year with us during their university courses. So completing our placement year is a great stepping stone into a future career with Cummins.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Tom. So hopefully you've got a bit of an insight now to who Cummins is. There was a lot of information on those slides. So what we've also done is put all of that content on the Cummins Hub on GradCracker. So after the webinar, you can refer back to that. Obviously, that's really good information that you could use when putting your application together, and then when you're going through the whole application process, if you do decide to apply to Cummins. Okay, so we've spoken to the grads, we've been introduced to Tom and Emma as well, so thank you for the introductions. We're going to now move on to Grace. Grace, the students know all about Cummins now, what you do, who you are, where they could be based. If I was a student listening in, I would want to know how I can prepare to apply to Cummins. So what would you suggest?
So I think the first thing that I would suggest is just make sure that you're familiar with Cummins. As you mentioned at the beginning, Carla, there's tons of information on our company hub. We have some student and graduate profiles on there. We have lots of videos on there where you can kind of learn more about kind of what we do, what some of our facilities look like. And then there is an early careers section where you can learn about all the different types of roles that we have. So we have some information on there about summer internships, placements and graduate positions. But as Tom mentioned, at Cummins, we try to fill the majority of our graduate roles through our placement students. So we place a really high emphasis and high value on the placement schemes. We invest a lot of time in the recruitment, making sure we get the right individuals into the business. and then we will spend a lot of time with the placement students developing them, because we hope that the placement students will come and join us as graduates and then have a long career with Cummins. So that might be why some years we don't tend to have as many graduate vacancies. But we will be opening early October for our placement opportunities. We have approximately 120 different vacancies each year. That's spread across all different functions within Cummins, but a large proportion of that 120 is engineering or STEM related roles. You can apply through GradCracker, so you can click the link, apply, have a look at all the different roles that we have available. You can have a look at the different adverts and see the different kinds of engineering vacancies that we have, and just learn a little bit more about the different functions and the different sites. We do encourage you to apply, towards multiple roles. You can apply to multiple sites. That's not an issue. And then part of the application process is to fill out just some short information online and attach a copy of your CV. Then if you're successful at kind of the CV initial application screening stage, we will invite you to complete some online testing. And then if you're successful at that stage, you'll then be invited to either an assessment day or an interview. It kind of depends on which role that you've applied for. Throughout every step of the process, of the application process, you'll have a dedicated recruiter. They will be in contact with you throughout, so you'll know where you are at every step of the process. And at any point that you have any questions, they will be available for you to speak to. So I guess some kind of tips that I would provide for the application process is make sure that, that your CV is completely up to date, the information is really clear. That will be our first kind of perception of you. So a lot of CVs can look very similar, particularly the education section. So what I would suggest to kind of make yourself stand out is tell us about all the additional things that you have to offer, aside from the degree that you're studying. Tell us about the hobbies that you're doing. Tell us about any projects that you've worked on, any interesting projects that you might have been involved in at university. Tell us about any volunteering work that you're doing. And don't just list, don't just do a bullet point list of those different extracurricular activities, but make sure you tell us what are they involved, what have you learned from it. I've seen some CVs in the past where students might have said, listed as a bullet point grade 8 in piano, which that's an amazing achievement. So if you have something like that, tell us what have you learned from it and how will that apply to a role at Cummins. Something like that shows that you're really committed and really focused. And that is a skill that we would look for, in one of our engineering placements. Likewise, if you do any volunteering or you've got a part-time job, tell us, what you do, but also, what skills have you learned, how that can apply to the placement role. That is kind of the thing that will really set you apart from the other CVs that we might come across. And then the other important thing that I'd like to mention as part of the application process is Cummins recruit according to the core values. So as Tom mentioned on his slides, we are really placing a great emphasis on our values. All the Cummins employees live by the values, and we will be looking for individuals who meet those values. So just make sure when you're applying that you're familiar with them, and just think how you might be able to feed those into your CV, and that's kind of how we will be assessing candidates. And I think that's kind of covered it all.
Perfect, Grace. Thank you very much. Grace covered it brilliantly there. So from the start, when you're thinking about applying to Cummins all the way through to putting in a good quality application. What I'd also mention as well is that you've actually taken the time to sit and watch this webinar, and reference back to points that Grace, Tom and the grads and Emma are going to make as well. If I was Cummins as a recruiter, I think, oh, brilliant, you've sat there, you've watched the webinar, you've really and absorb the information from everybody here today. So thank you all so far. Now I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who's going to speak to the graduates, and Emma about their journeys at Cummins. Sophie,
Thank you,
over to
Carla. So yeah, I'm going to start with Emma, as you have really recently finished your placement year. So just to kind of carry on with that journey, I'm going to start with, you know, your experiences on that placement. So I know we touched upon during introductions, Emma, just a little bit about, you know, the team you worked in, but if you can just give an overview of, you know, what role did you play in that team throughout your placement year, and what does the department you worked in actually do in layman's terms, if you like?
Okay, so I was the engineering placement student for last year. And I worked in the power cylinder, crank rod and gear train team. So we're basically design and validation experts in those parts in the engine. Within the team, there's 7 of us, and we're based in Daventry, which is in the UK, obviously, the US, and also India. So we'd have weekly team meetings to collaborate over Skype and discuss project progress. Within the team, I was the placement student, but I had 2 mentors within the team. So I had weekly one-to-ones with both of them, where I could discuss my work and ask them any questions that I wanted to ask of them. During the placement year as well, I would say it really gave me an opportunity to see the principles and concepts that I learnt in university applied in the real world, and that's I would say is the biggest advantage of doing placement. During my placement year, I worked on multiple projects running alongside each other. And some of them were more design based, some of them were more technical based, some of them were more test based, but that really gave me a broad skill set and also a wide engineering knowledge through the year. Probably the highlight of the year was leading quite a technical and high level project, which was scary first to have that responsibility, but once starting it, I really enjoyed it, and it was great to be given that responsibility, which really grew my confidence.
Mm-hmm. That sounds amazing. It sounds like you've got some really fantastic experiences there of working not only with quite a small team and being given quite a lot of experience from day one, but also working with teams across the world.
That's what I'd say, yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of, if you had to pick out some, apart from the project that you led, some kind of really key experiences that stand out to you, what would you say were the highlights of your year-long placement?
So I'll start off with that project I led. So a quick background, it was a very long project, it took over the year, but basically I had to create an engine test. So I had to write a test plan, plan the build, work with suppliers. So I ended up creating this test plan and then working with a team and then see it being implemented into the test cells. So that was actually seeing the engine be built, actually seeing the engine being tested. So I say that was a highlight, seeing my work actually go into the real world of Cummins. And another highlight I would say is I worked on a lot of other projects, and I had to release CTRs and release reports, so release Cummins reports, and seeing my name at the top of the page and my work actually going into like Cummins was really great.
That's amazing. It's been so nice. You must have been so proud to see that during your placement as well.
I know, and going from university to that obviously can be a bit like daunting, but once you start, you have your team around you, you have your managers, and it's great. You get the support of Cummins you need, definitely.
That's great. I mean, that's one of the things I was going to go on to, Emma. You know, what sort of, you know, support and training did you get throughout that placement year? How did that work?
Yeah, so obviously you learn like so much on the job, being in person, gaining them skills. You also have the opportunity with Cummins to go to extra training courses. So those can assist with your role. So I did a lot of engineering based training, and you can sign up for that. Some's online, some's in person. Well, maybe not because of coronavirus, but it was great. And also, I also had the opportunity to work in another team during my time there. So as a placement student, they said to me, if you could work in any other team, if you had the opportunity to have that experience, you can do that. So I worked for a different team on a project leading that, and that really gave me an insight to also what that team does and the components of the engine they work on. And I'd say that was a great learning experience. So yeah.
Fantastic. And one of the things I wanted to touch upon was actually something you mentioned kind of when you kind of initially introduced yourselves there, is going back to university, obviously doing a placement year is going to be a massive benefit to you, but kind of why do you think that's going to be such a benefit for your kind of final year at university? What things are you going to take from your placement year back to uni, and how will that help with your academic studies, do you think?
I would say doing a placement, of course, firstly, like really makes you see how your university degree goes into your future career, and how your learnings and just learning something in a lecture or learning a formula or learning a concept actually is implemented in the real world. And I feel like now I've done my placement year, I know the sort of career path I want to go into as well, and the sort of field I want to go into. So what sort of areas I have more interest in to maybe write my dissertation about, or what sort of modules I would choose as well. Because before doing my placement year, I was, to be honest, I knew I wanted to do engineering, but I'd never had any engineering experience, so I didn't know what sort of team would I want to work in, what sort of thing would I want to do, what part would I want to work on, what would I want to be a designer, would I want to be a tester. But doing this placement year, I'd say I really know where I want to go now, and I know the sort of company I want to work for, the sort of thing I want to work on. And I'd say going into my university final year, I can really aim my learning, so what modules I choose, what dissertation I do. And I think I've got a lot of a better work ethic definitely doing the not 8 till 5 or like the 9 till 5 working. I feel like I'm definitely ready for third year now.
Amazing. That's some really, really good takeaways there for our audience as well, as to the benefits of not actually just being on the placement year and the amazing experiences that you got there, but also how that's going to impact going back to university and really help, hopefully, get your grades even higher than they would be, because you've got that real world experience as well. So that's fantastic. So excitingly, you will be going back to Cummins after your final year to join as a graduate. And I understand that you're also going to be completing a master's whilst you do that. So how are Cummins supporting that as well, Emma?
Yeah, so I've only finished a placement year about 10 days ago, and then got the call a couple of days later, and we're in talks about coming back as a graduate. And something I said to my manager, Tom, and also other engineers, that I do actually want to complete my master's part-time. So Cummins said they'll support me and they'll let me do that while I work there. So still need to organise, it's a year away and everything, but it's still great. And I actually do want to do my master's because I'll gain further knowledge, mechanical engineering knowledge, but also it's kind of an academic requirement that could help me get chartership and become a chartered engineer. So that's really why I want to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emma. That's some really good insights you've given us there about your placement year. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on to talk to the grads, but before I do that, I'm going to show you a short video about some of the visions and innovations that are happening at Cummins for the future, and the sort of thing that the grads that we've got today will be involved in the future, and you potentially as a graduate in the future at Cummins could also be working on. So I'm just going to get that up and share that for you now. Has everyone else got sound?
No, Sophie, I haven't got it working at my end.
That's strange. Excuse me then. Right, my screen seems to have frozen. It's not letting me stop sharing.
We can see something on our screen now.
Yeah, we can see the video now.
Okay. Let's try this now. No.
That was working.
Bear with me, guys. I do apologise.
We did, yeah, the video did move and we got a little bit of sound there for a second.
Okay, fab. Right, yeah, it looks like something is happening now. So let's try that again. Sorry, technical issues. It was working earlier, I promise. So as you can see, there were some really exciting things coming up there. So what I am going to do now is I'm going to start by talking to Harry. So as we heard at the beginning, so Harry is a manufacturing engineering technician, and also undertook a placement year with Cummins before rejoining as a graduate. But Harry also has an interesting story, because during your final year, so between your placement year and coming back to Cummins, you also continued to work with Cummins, didn't you, during your kind of final year projects? So I thought it'd be great if you could really start by telling us a little bit about how that works and the benefits you found of that.
Yeah, so during my placement year, we was made aware of like a scheme that they had. It was called Project Student. I'm not sure if that's what it's still called, but obviously in final year of university, you have to do a dissertation, a final year project. And obviously being given the opportunity to do something Cummins related, especially at Daventry, was something that I liked the idea of. So I came up with a few ideas of potential dissertation ideas, spoke to other people on site that had done dissertations as well, based at Daventry. So I was amazed when I got talking. There was loads of people that have done dissertations based on like operations, engineering, wide variety of topics. So come up with a few ideas. You then obviously talk to your manager about it and say, look, this is what I'd like to pursue and go ahead with. They kind of review it and say, yep, okay, that'd be something which we'd be happy for you to divulge and investigate in and kind of put forward. Then it went forward to the university, obviously because they have to approve your project as well. So they was happy to support me with that. And going through it, obviously I was able to keep my Cummins laptop with me. So I still had access to all the systems that I needed, all of the data. And I was also able to use that during my final year of university too, for obviously stuff that wasn't related to my final year project. So I was catching up on my lectures, doing the topics on the laptop as well, which I was supportive of. I was also able to go onto site whenever I needed to collect data or to see certain people, to have meetings. So it was probably once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks. I was just letting them know, like, I'm coming on site. I still have my employee card, so I could still just go on site. People would be like, oh, how you doing? Like, how's it going? And stuff like that. So it was nice to still keep in touch whilst I was at university with everyone I was working on my placement year. And then probably similar to Emma, a few weeks after I'd finished that, and I was going in and having meetings with my sponsors from work, they'll ask me if I wanted to come back once I'd finished university. So I absolutely took that opportunity up.
Fantastic. That must have made it so much easier as well when you kind of went back after your final year, because you hadn't had a full year just kind of break. You'd already been keeping in touch. Must have just been like going home after your placement year.
Yeah, so it was definitely, I found it easier to hit the floor running kind of thing, because I was already aware of what was going on around the plant and what project was going on. Obviously keeping in touch with everyone is a massive help. So I'd definitely say, yeah, I mean, as long as you see the opportunity there to do it and it is something that's viable, then they absolutely support you, because it not only benefits you, but it benefits them as well. When the amount of time and effort, I'm sure like everyone else here will know, that you put into a dissertation, they're more than happy to have that investigated and then to come up like with your solutions.
Fantastic. And is that something that when you rejoined as a graduate, you kind of carried on that theme? You carried on working on a similar thing?
So the dissertation I did was the calibration of the dynos. So with your dissertation, it's a very like detailed look into one project. I've not yet had chance to go back and look at it further, but I finished the project enough obviously to close the dissertation out. But it is still definitely on the to-do list to carry on with it. And things like that.
Brilliant. So can you just tell us a little bit more about what you're doing at Cummins now then? So what have you done for the last couple of years of rejoining since you've been a grad?
Yeah, so rejoining after my placement year, obviously you're given a bit more responsibility, you're able to look after a few more things. So working in test, we look after the production engines, so anything that's finished being built, rigging them up, supporting the line. So we're quite operational based, so the operators on the shop floor can put in ideas that they want for improvements to be made, Same to leadership team, they put audits in that they want improvements making. So it's kind of supporting the day-to-day production needs, and really just trying to help get the engines through as quick as possible, making sure they're all okay.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Harry.
Cheers.
What I'm going to do next, I'm going to scoot over to Tom and find out a little bit, Tom Harris, not Tom P, to find out a little bit more from you, Tom, about your story, really. So obviously we had a brief introduction to you at the beginning, but can you start by telling me a little bit about what attracted you to Cummins?
Yeah, so I think my university actually had links with Cummins, and we'd had people who'd gone to Cummins on placement before from my university who'd come back and said they really liked it. They felt like they'd really developed at the end of the year. You know, they'd been given plenty of responsibility. You know, they'd been given the training that they needed, and they'd always had support from managers. But at the same time, they felt like in the second half of their internship, really, they kind of were let loose to go and have a bit more responsibility and run things for themselves. So to me, that sounded like the kind of thing that I wanted to do. You know, I wanted not to be, not to have my hand held the whole time. You know, to be allowed to go and make, even if you make mistakes, you know, to have someone who's allowed you to have that kind of responsibility in the first place.
Do you think that's kind of a common theme then, Tom, that Cummins really look for people that can work independently? Is that something that you kind of would be expected to do, you know, on an internship as a graduate?
Yeah, I think I'd probably say that your first, you know, 3 or 4 months, you're learning all the systems that we kind of have and the way that things are done. And Cummins do often put someone quite close to you for you to learn off them. And a lot of the time it is a grad student, which is really good for us as a grad because we get the chance to learn leadership. And but then, you know, they allow you to just kind of take on your own projects, as Emma said, go and find out things for yourself, you know, work with other teams. And that's just kind of an invaluable thing to do. You learn how to communicate with people who have been there for 30, 40 years. And you kind of become very good then at just talking with people without kind of having that fear of doing it that you did when you first joined.
Fantastic. So could you tell us a little bit more about, you know, your team and, you know, what role you play within the team?
Yeah, so I work as a service engineer now. So I'm based in 2 different teams. One's based in Daventry, and that's focused on supporting current products, so stuff that we actually have out in the field. So making sure that any issues we have with that product, whether it's related to faulty parts or systems or information or tooling, making sure that we deal with that quickly and as efficiently as we can. So, you know, we relieve customer pain. So we kind of get parts back from the field, analyze them, try and work out what's going on and how we can put a short-term fix into, you know, stop them having this issue in the short term. And then how we can work with teams like analysis and test and whatnot to find a long-term solution and get that implemented. And then my other role is with the guys based more over in the USA. So that's called VPI, which is Value Package Introduction. So it's a new product. And it's kind of making sure that what we're designing here onwards is as easy to service as possible. So, you know, making sure that we're not putting bolts in unreachable positions and stuff like that. Making sure that we create the right tools and provide the right training for our guys in the field to work on our products, and provide the right manuals, stuff like that. But the teams on both sides are great to work with. They're always happy to help with any queries that you have. And yeah, it's just fantastic, really.
Brilliant. Again, it's, you know, it's working globally again there, isn't it? It's not just, you know, with your team in the UK, working with people in the US as well. And obviously involved in working with lots of different businesses outside of Cummins as well. So that must give you a really broad range of experiences.
Yeah, it does. You work in a lot of time zones as well, which is something that's quite hard to get used to at Cummins, but it keeps you on your feet when you've got early morning meetings and late meetings. So
absolutely. So looking to kind of the next 3 or 4 years, Tom, what would you say is kind of next in your career plan?
So I'd hope to move to senior engineer before the end of the year. And then realistically, I mean, I've traveled to China and the US with Cummins in the 2 years that I've been back so far. and the trip to the US was to go and visit my team out there, and I really liked it out there, and I'd like to move out there, to be honest, to work out there with Cummins, and that's something that I've kind of tied into my development points through my talent management system stuff that we do at the moment, is join that team over there.
Fantastic. So it's amazing to work for an organisation where, you know, that is an opportunity. You know, the global opportunity is there, you know, if you work hard and work with different teams and stuff. So that's great. Lovely. Thank you so much, Tom. Okay, finally, before we head back to Grace and Tom P, I'm going to talk to Verity.
Hey, sorry.
Hey.
The light in the meeting room just turned off.
I'm sure that keeps going off, Verity. I keep looking at you.
I know, when I don't move for a long time, it just stops working.
You need to dance around the whole time. Jimmy. So yeah, coming over to you now to kind of hear a little bit more about your story. So you work in a different department and role to the other grads. So can you again just give us an overview of, you know, your role, what it is that you do at Cummins?
Yeah, so I work in lab operations, which is basically development testing. So what we do is we have loads of test cells, which is like a huge room with air, coolant and all this, but basically we mimic real life running. So we try to mimic the situation that's happening on the field and try and essentially reenact that in the test cell. So whether that's existing customer engines that are going wrong in the field, or whether it's a new engine that we're validating, we basically, as Emma said before, she worked on an engine test plan where she saw it from build through to testing it in the test cell. So essentially we will take Emma's requirements and meet those requirements when the engine is in the test cell. And these days engineers come up with all these new funky ideas on what they want to do and how they want to test things. So we basically have to meet the requirements that they're asking for. For example, we've got a tilt rig, which is, we have loads of engines that we use on mining sites. So they're obviously always on slopes and stuff. So we have a rig where we can tilt the engines and put them at different degrees to see how the engine performs basically. So basically what we do is we validate new parts or validate new engines, produce new calibrations. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we do.
Fantastic. And what would a typical day look like then for you, Verity? You know, coming into work in the morning, what would kind of your process be throughout that day?
Chaos.
Somebody else.
Yeah. It's,
I can vouch for that. I've done a similar role in the past, and that's definitely a good way to sum it up.
Everybody started nodding and smiling then. You can just say,
Yeah.
I've heard it.
Yeah, it's just, you just never know what's going to happen. One day everything will be running really smoothly. We have about 5 diesel test cells and 2 gas test cells. So one day everything will be running smooth. The next day every single test cell will be falling apart. So we will have like exhaust cracking or one of the heat exchangers blocked. So we have a whole team. We've got technicians, we've got testers to run the test cells, we've got technicians to look at the issues, and we've got a big team. I'm one of the engineers, one of the 4 engineers that works in the team. But yeah, it's essentially a lot of firefighting, but we have a lot of process improvements to do as well. So we try to streamline the process. While we're not firefighting, we try to make the process better to make them more streamlined so we can reduce the number of issues we have.
Amazing. It sounds like it is definitely one of those jobs where no 2 days are the same.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen. Okay, so what, if you could tell us a little bit about sort of future projects that are coming up as well, anything exciting that you've got coming up in the next year, for example?
So personally for myself, it's been quite nice being in lab ops because I've kind of been able to model my own career. I've been able to say this is what I'd like to do. So my managers kind of helped me with that career path. So I'd like to go more into kind of project management and looking at facility side. As someone who graduated in chemical engineering, I wanted to go into more being able to apply those chemical engineering principles. So I've been able to take on facilities projects and stuff like that with improving test cell facilities so that they run better. And for instance, how to make a process better, so we have less issues with it in the future runs. So that's a lot of my projects are facilities projects. But in terms of test cells, we have loads of new exciting projects coming out. You know, we're validating new engines. We constantly have engines that go wrong in the field, and the likes of Emma and Tom's team have to kind of redesign new parts. We have loads of different subsystem teams, so they redesign the new parts and then put it on an engine, and then we'll have to validate them. So like I said, the engineers are coming up with all these new funky designs and ideas, so it's quite exciting, it's quite nice.
Fantastic. And over the next few years, so with your career plan, what sort of how does the training aspect of your role work? Is that something that just runs alongside? Are you doing training courses all the time? How does that work, Verity?
Like I said, Cummins are quite good with kind of developing your career. When for a long time I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, and they're quite helpful in helping you figure out what it is that are your good skill sets and what you can improve on. There's a lot of constructive criticism and feedback, which is good as well, because it helps you to work on yourself. With me personally, I've been wanting to go into project management, so I'm doing a Prince 2 project management qualification. I think they cater to what you want. So like, for instance, Emma wanted to do her master's, so, you know, Cummins are saying, yeah, okay, we'll help you with that. I've done a lot of kind of Six Sigma training and a lot of kind of Cummins level training, so a lot of training on engine fundamentals and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of the training I've undertaken is to do with engine performance and stuff like that, but I've taken on outside training like the project management qualifications, and I'm going to do a PLC controls training. So they're really accommodating on what you want to do, so it's good. Yeah,
great stuff. It sounds like, you know, if you work with your manager, you really have the opportunity to get training in whatever areas really interest you, so that's really good.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to hand back to Carla now. I know I've probably run over, but thank you so much to all of you for being here today and giving your insights into, you know, your grad schemes and your internship. It's been really fascinating for us, as well as I'm sure for our audience as well. So handing back to Carla now.
Well, thanks, Grace, my plan was to come back to you, but did you cover everything off that you wanted to speak about at the beginning, or is there anything else that you wanted to add from your point of view?
I guess just to kind of recap what I said earlier. So, you know, when you're thinking about applying, learn as much as you can about Cummins. We've spoke a lot today about the Daventry site, but we also hire a lot of engineers into our Huddersfield site and also Darlington, and we do have other sites across the UK. So it's always worth just, you know, kind of having a look at where we are, any particular locations and you know, different roles that you're interested in. As for the kind of application process, or, you know, if you progressed through the process to kind of interview stages, I'd just kind of recommend learning as much as you can about the products, about, you know, about the role, about that site. So, for example, if you apply for an engineering role at Cummins Turbo Technologies in Huddersfield, it would always be worth just doing a little bit of background research into, you know, what does a turbocharger do, for example. That's just kind of a top tip that I would give for anyone going into an interview. We don't expect detailed technical knowledge at all, but just a little bit of awareness about, you know, what do we manufacture at that particular location, and what might the role involve. And just the most important thing is to kind of show us that your skills are transferable. So we do encourage students from all STEM disciplines to apply for roles. We're not just kind of looking for engineering courses. You know, any kind of STEM background is fantastic. Just make sure that you can, you know, show us how the skills that you've learned on your course can be applicable to whatever role that you're doing at Cummins. And then I guess just a couple of tips for CVs. So as I mentioned earlier, just trying to make them really clear. It's always great to add, you know, when your graduation year is. It just helps us with the screening process. And it's really nice to include that that your degree does allow you to do a placement year.
So you might have a 4-year engineering course with placement. It just helps us with the initial screening. And then we also have on the GradCracker Hub a document that kind of gives you some top tips on virtual interviews. So at the moment, you know, with the current climate, we are looking at you know, holding assessments virtually. So it's just a document that can kind of give you plenty of advice and tips to make sure you're prepared. But yeah, any questions, please reach out to anyone from Cummins or through GradCracker. We're more than happy to discuss any of the roles or opportunities that we've got available.
Thank you very much, Grace. And yeah, the document that Grace just mentioned is on the profile of Cummins. If you just click on the profile, you can download that document there. And again, just to reiterate what Grace said at the beginning, the importance of mentioning the core values as well. You know, make sure you do know what those are, because you might get asked about them during the interview process. Tom, I just want to finish off with you, Tom P, if I may. So we've been through the application process. Obviously, grads are really excited now. Grads and interns are really excited now to get their applications in. What would their first month be like at working for Cummins, and how should they prepare? What should they expect?
Yeah, sure. So I think the others probably touched on quite a lot of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just one thing that hasn't been mentioned in your first week, Cummins have what's called global onboarding. So in better times, it's a week away in a nice hotel, and all new starters go through that. So whether it's students, graduates, or corporate executives, everybody does the onboarding week. So it gets you sort of the history of Cummins, kind of all the values and ethos of the company, and also gives you a good chance to meet other people who might not necessarily be in your function on your site. So you can sort of right from day one have a network built outside of your direct team.
Yeah.
So that kind of takes up the first week, and then following that you've got the 101 processes and IT equipment and access rights that you need to request. So the joys of working for a big company, I guess. But yeah, I think overall, a Cummins placement is not a shadowing placement. You're not going to spend a year just watching someone else do the job. You are thrown in at the deep end somewhat. Yeah, and right from day one, we look for opportunities for you to do real meaningful work for the company. You're not given arbitrary projects that are just in the background or anything like that. You are from day one working on an active Cummins project, whether it's current product support or new product introduction, working with the production line. Your work will mean something from day one. So that's something that I found sort of really great with Cummins, that they do give all of our students and graduates that opportunity.
Yeah.
But I think also as well, through the whole process, it's kind of don't be afraid to ask questions. The more sort of driven you are yourself, the more you'll get from your placement. Cummins has a very open communication sort of ethos. So within your first month, you might be moving from having conversations with chief engineers in the UK to global technical experts in the US, or readiness and purchasing teams in India. And even as a student, if you've got something you want to say in a meeting, whether you've got a bit of technical knowledge or you want to question something, there's really an encouragement for people to sort of step up and ask those questions to sort of very senior people, and people will listen to you. Yeah. For your valid points. So yeah, definitely, yeah, it's a good placement, that's for sure. A lot of opportunities to succeed and really take ownership of projects.
Yeah, it sounds like you get real life experience from day one. I think through the webinar, when Emma was talking as well, it's all been really quite inspiring. So if you are, I think the key message that I want to get out to the audience today is that if you do an internship with Cummins, it could lead to a graduate opportunity. And imagine going back to university, having had your internship at Cummins, thinking that you've already secured a graduate opportunity. You know, that's something that will probably de-stress you quite a lot in your final year, because you know they are very stressful. So yeah, remember to take that away from you. The opportunities will be open soon, so keep an eye on the hub. Make sure you follow Cummins now to be alerted to their graduate opportunities and their internships as well. I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today as part of the webinar. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you, Cummins, for joining us today. I love all the backgrounds that are going on. I think they're brilliant. So yeah, thank you all. Don't forget, just a message to the audience, you can re-watch this as a whole, or we'll break it into segments, and that will also feature in the Career Centre. And next week we'll be joined by Sophie. You're joining me again next week, aren't you, Sir?
I am, yeah.
With MBDA. So hope to see you then, and thank you very much everybody for attending and joining the webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.